Hi everyone, welcome back to Miss Roni Reads. Today is Wear It Purple Day, so I am all decked out in my purple clothes to show support for members of our LGBTQIA plus community. I hope you're wearing purple today too. Today we're going to be reading the first chapter of this book, Metal Fish Falling Snow by Cath. Let's read the blurb and see if you're interested. Dylan and her adored French mother dream of one day sailing across the ocean to France. Paris, Dylan imagines, is a place where her black skin won't make her stand out, a place where she might feel she belongs. But when she loses her mother in a freak accident, Dylan finds herself on a very different journey, a road trip across outback Australia in the care of her mother's grieving boyfriend, Pat. As they travel through remote towns further and further from the water that Dylan longs for, she and Pat form an unlikely bond, one that will be broken when he leaves her with the family she has never known. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Running Wolf. I could be anywhere. Shadows from flickering tree branches dance across the bed, and the floor is littered with a mountain of junk parts. Aha! Now I know. Bits and pieces of the world Pat has collected. Sure, he can make them new again if he just tightens a screw. True enough, machines are only alive if we want them to be. They have a different system inside that can be manipulated. And there he is, in the middle of the kitchen, flipping bacon like a pancake. Fat spits onto his arm, but Pat doesn't even flinch. Sit down. Pat's not one for hairs and graces, not at 6 a.m. in the morning. There are fried eggs too. I break the yolk and watch as it runs the wrong way down my plate. From now on, you eat what you're given and you don't play with your food, Pat says, real quiet. But it's moving south. I knife the bacon rind off and put it under the runny yolk. It stops going any further, so I eat the bacon and leave the yellow puddle, even though it's the best part of the egg. You finish that plate? It's a long drive. Pat scrapes his knife like fingernails on a blackboard. Joelle Parkinson did that once because she thought it would make us squirm, but in the end, she bent a nail backwards and cried. I try to finish my eggs, I really do, but Pat's in a mood and I can't tell him that his forks are the wrong kind of metal, the thin kind that gives my teeth a headache. I took a fork from home, but right now I don't know where it is. We had a complete set of estate cutlery. Bought it from Mr. and Mrs. Dixon when they both went into a nursing home because they'd forgotten who the other one was. Even though they'd been married for 68 years, kept ringing the police on each other, screaming that there was a burglar in the house. Mrs. Dixon even hit Herbert on the head once with a 500-gram tin of home-brand peaches in syrup. But I'm happy we got their forks because they were proper good, heavy with a fancy D engraved on the end, so it looks like they were supposed to be mine all along. It's a dragon breath morning, fingers so cold they don't feel like a part of my body. I stand on the front porch trying to tap some warmth into my toes and start to motor my heart. It's a morning so quiet you'd think we'd already been forgotten, or were never here at all. But a town like this doesn't just wake up to say goodbye, and maybe that's okay, because for now it's all mine. The Maggies with the morning song, warbling joy into the pale blue sky, dewy spider webs all over the bushes, each one like a perfect equation. Across and down the road, little Jackson and his dad are walking to their car. But I don't have anything for show and tell. Well, you can't take a pot plant. Make something up. His dad trips over a garden gnome. Shit, he says, the volume turned down. I can hear the Garbo coming to, scratching a mole on the back of his neck that's been bothering him for weeks. Then a car door slams behind me and rattles the porch windows. My Maggies fly off to find some worms, and the spiders pack up their webs. Dylan! Even though my name swings both ways, the doctor told everyone I was going to be a boy. Probably thought he saw a willy on the ultrasound that was actually just my little finger in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's deception, my dad said when he found out that it was me instead of a son and drove off for a few days. But then he came back and said they had to call me Dylan because it was a good, strong name. Plus, it was the name of his friend who was in jail, and he'd sent me a baseball cap with little Dylan on it. Come on, quick sticks, says Pat. He looks at the ground, says we'd better get going, but his words fall into the hole he's digging with his boot. I want to slip into those dry cracks and stay put, lie in the ground with Mama. But I know the earth and this town are only for those who belong, and without someone to love, you can't belong anywhere. We're leaving this back paddock town. As you hit the main drag, there's a sign that says, "Welcome to Bean, keep driving." Mitchell Baker, who's always selling homemade cigarettes around the back of the bike shed, wrote that last part with a black marker he stole from the art room. It's true, though, you can miss this town and not miss a thing. It's where I've long been but never belonged. Not like Piper or Lily or the Magan twins. Their families go way back to the beginning of time, and even then, people are still calling them Coon and Abbo like they shouldn't be here either. My time is up before it really began, and I can't say I'm too glum about that. I am sad to leave Mum behind, though, because now she'll always be part of this town, even though no one will ever see her again. Before I made a mess of it all, Mum and I were going to sail back to her belonging, back to where she'd been a happy little girl drinking hot chocolate out of a bowl and skipping to school with a big chunk of stinky cheese in her bag. Mum missed Paris so much it felt like she'd pulled a muscle in her heart, and some days she would just curl up on the bed trying to remember what cold felt like. It was never really winter in Bean. I couldn't imagine a snow falling from the sky, each flake one of a kind, like a frozen fingerprint that only lives between the sky and the earth. We're really going to make it happen. Get away from the heat and the flies and the non-belonging that was always making us feel heavy here in Bean. I know Mum is in the ground now, but I still need to take her home because we are more than our bodies. Tiffany, who runs Mr. Size, the candle and crystal shop above the Chinese takeaway, told me Mum's spirit was free now, so all I'm thinking about is getting her to the water. I've never seen the sea, felt the waves slap onto my back, salt water spray across my face. The town pool in Bean isn't the same. Most of the time it's only half full, and you can always tell when Ash Malone's done a stinky wee up the deep end. It's a long way from Bean to the ocean. It's numbers ticking over and over on the dashboard and a whole lot of sleeps trying to dream yourself there. And I have, because it's the only thing that matters if you want to stay real. The land out here is a sea of dry dust. It covers the ground and stops living things from breathing. Nothing comes out of the earth, and the only things that go in are bones and history, death and regret. That's what the old men propping up the front bar say when they're talking about themselves through another pint of stout. Water is a miracle. What else can slip through your hands or crush you in 2 seconds flat? What else is soft and strong enough to carve patterns into stone? It regulates, generates, and lubricates body parts we didn't even know we had. Babies are 78% water when they're born. The older we get, the less we have. Right now, I'm only about 55%. That's all teenage girls have. But when I get to the sea, the salty air will fill up my lungs like a petrol pump, and maybe my numbers will change. Mum used to say that everyone's soul is connected to water because it's a life force. Even though Paris is a dirty city far from the ocean, the sea is always a passage home. Water is where this story begins and ends, a question chasing its tail for the answer. And what lies in the middle? Well, I'll save that for the car ride. Pat was right about that. It's a long trip. He locks up the house, flicking pieces of dry paint off the porch, stares at his hand, a few red specks caught under the nails, and I reckon that's about all he's taking from the place. If I squint hard enough, I can see Barry standing tall in the field at the bottom of Novus Lane. Now, you might think I'm silly for naming a tree. Wouldn't be the first time I've been called dumb as a stump or smart as a stick. Duncan Glover used to call me a tea bag. It takes a while for things to filter through, but Barry's not a regular tree. He's where I used to go and hide myself. Barry knows I'm going now. He knows what happened too. Pat catches my eyes on him and brushes something invisible from his pants. You remember everything? Suddenly I'm afraid. Have I packed all the knowledge? Because we're not coming back, he says with a big, fat full stop. But I don't know all of the galaxies or what disease emphysema is. Pat rolls his eyes. I've got it wrong again. People don't always use words to say what they think. Sometimes it can be a long, unblinking stare from the other side of Parker Street one Tuesday arvo that burns like a branding iron. Go back is what those eye marks on your shadow, so you're always in the wrong place, no matter where you are. Right now, I'm using that eye talk with Pat. He hasn't said anything about the boat, so I don't know if he thinks he's coming too. I give him this cowboy glare that says, "Sorry, mate, it's not on the cards." Not even the 4 of spades. This is a family trip and you and me are not that. I know that the boat will be made out of metal or wood. I just don't know where it is yet, but I will feel it in my waters, as Margie says about the rain that mostly always never comes. She's 89 and has lived in Bean forever. This town is the beginning, middle and end of the world for her. Margie's life map is very small, but mine is about to start. A single crack in the dry earth travelling east from the middle of nowhere to the wide open sea. Sometimes I find my way into memories that aren't mine. Saturday just gone, I walked past a lady picking up pork ribs from Gary the butcher, and suddenly I'm at her kitchen table watching as she plays gin rummy with the girls, cackling like galahs when Theodora says that Ian sleepwalked into the kitchen and peed into the geranium pot by the window. But gee, hasn't it flowered well since then? I'm only there for a few seconds before I get sucked back out, but I know a lot of people in this town and the secret things they do. I didn't ask for that kind of knowing, and sometimes I wish I could shut it off, especially when I see things I don't want to. Like Mr. Kelly's grandson, who lives in Adelaide but comes here for the holidays. I passed him one day sitting on the front porch, looked into his eyes and watched as he drowned a cat in a bucket of water behind Mr. Kelly's back shed. It was all gone in a flash, and when I looked back at him sitting on the porch, he held up a kitten for me to see, cuddled it close to his chest and smiled. I had a kitty once called Ashtray. He'd cuddle close to me as well, purr loud as a lawnmower. Did Mr. Kelly's grandson know that too? People like him are why you keep your eyes to yourself. When I told Mum about the things I saw, I thought she'd say, "It's only a hop, skip and a jump from heaven to hell for telling a lie." But she whispered that life was full of things we could not understand, that it must be hard to suddenly see a glimpse of what makes people tick, for better or for worse. I won't be taking any of those memories with me if I can help it. Got no room for drowned cats or pot plant pee. Brown foam bulges out from under the wrecked car seat cover, and I think the whole world is second-hand. What does new smell and look like? How do you feel if you're pretty? The engine chokes on its own smoke and splutters into action. We pull out and follow the sun as it rises. No one but us, like we called ahead and booked out the whole damn road. If we were bandits on the run, we'd have special names like Fury and the Tadpole or Buster and the Chalk Drop. But in this bomb of a ute, held together with rust and rubber bands, it's just me and Pat, and the only thing chasing us is a tornado of dust. It spurts out from the tyres and hits the back window like a hazy brown blanket. You'd think it just being the two of us, we'd have a cracker of a conversation going, but Pat sold all of his words for a big slice of silence. Clenches the wheel so hard it looks like his knuckles are going to pop through the skin. And when someone has angry hands, you don't talk. But I know we're thinking the same thing, that it's my fault she's not here. True enough, I've never been very good at keeping people around, and now I'm basically an orphan. Although Pat's grumpy like Daddy Warbucks, without the bucks, it's really not at all like Annie. Pat's not my dad. He's Mum's boyfriend. Was. Now everything is past, and I'm not sure what he is to me, or vice versa. Dad's the one who made me black, a darkness so deep down you cannot take it out or scrape it off. Besides, I'm 14 and by now it's probably seeped into my bone marrow. Even though Mum had the safe kind of skin, I only got it on my palms and the soles of my feet. Not much good there. Maybe none of that matters anymore because this is the end of the beginning. We're coming up to the Red River Hotel. Might as well have been Pat's second home. I bet he's scared that the magic will happen without him. But just because you believe in something doesn't make it true. Mum said he was stupid to fill a metal box with a gas bill or a week's worth of shopping. Pat goes there a lot because he can't sleep and the lights are so bright that night is always day. They all know his name, the tap beer he likes and the pokey where he has to sit. One time he had got into a fight because Les was at his machine, so Pat tipped Les's cup on the floor and everyone scrambled to pick up the coins like they were piñata lollies. But the Red River's also where Mum used to work. She was only supposed to stay for a year, making her way around Australia one pub at a time. Mum was like some kind of exotic bird with her French accent. They used to joke about lining the floor of the bar with mattresses on account of all the fellas falling head over heels, including my dad. And even though there are black people in Paris, maybe he was kind of exotic to Mum too. At first they got on lovely because Dad wanted to make a go for it for real, but there was a complicated knot in Dad's head, and when it got too twisted, things got bad. Snap, bang, hearts in your mouth pounding like a racehorse, and hand whips across Mum's face and she holds her cheek red with a slap burn. Dad slams the door so hard the whole house shakes. Dad gave me my skin. It's not really his fault though, because he got the blackness from his dad. That's called a legacy, which is usually a good thing, like having a 5-octave singing voice or being double jointed. I can only click my knuckles when it gets real cold. Mum kept saying my skin was special, that it brought people and places together. Who and where, I used to ask, but she'd just look out the window at something that wasn't there. Mum didn't want to scare me, but I already knew. My granddad, William Freeman, is a bottom-of-the-well kind of black, darkly deep and deeply dark, a no-way-out kind of black that cracks the pavement wide open and swallows you whole. That kind of legacy's no good. Neither is my surname. I don't know why I got stuck with Freeman, because I don't feel free at all. Having this blackness weighs me down. Even though my skin is 1 shade lighter than my dad's and 2 shades lighter than William Freeman's, it's still dark enough to bring me trouble. Back gate banging in the wind, black like a wolf running through the night, panting with hunger. It might tear down the door with its sharp nails and turn into a ball of smoke, which I'd accidentally breathe in. Have that wolf hibernate in my chest and make me do bad things. When I told Mum about the smoky wolf, she took me to a lady doctor to have a chat about it all, but she just sat there and made me play with emotion-faced cards, like I was a baby or something. The blackness always made me feel wrong. Sometimes we'd go for a walk and people would look at me and then glance at Mum, like we didn't fit together. Once, a fat boy with a yellow front tooth rode past on a bike and called me Sambo. It sounded like a pretty word, but Mum chased after him. Couldn't hear what she said, but that boy turned around and stared me down for the longest time. He saw the wolf, and the wolf saw him. Another time, on a school trip to the Blue Mountains, these 2 men said that I should go back to where I came from. I said we weren't going home till Tuesday, but that was the wrong answer because they laughed. They said I was from Africa, but that's not true. I'm from Bean, and how could I get to Africa anyway? I don't have a passport or anyone to stay with. I know that they think brown skin is always somewhere else on a map, but I can't say mine comes from Ghana because when do people always crinkle their eyes and say Ghana, like they haven't heard me right? Then I have to say, no, that's in Africa. Guyana is in South America. And I'm tired of talking about that map and all the different continents. I didn't think those men would care anyway, so I just kept my mouth shut and looked at the ground for a very long time. At the YMCA hostel that night, there was unlimited soft drink top-ups. Normally, I would have been up for an alphabet burping competition because I can usually get to J, but on that particular night, if you'd opened me up, you would have seen that big old wolf howling at the moon, alone and lonely at the same time. Brown is a loud colour to wear in your face. I get onto the crowded bus and everyone looks at me like they've heard my skin arrive. What are you doing here? Their blank stares say. Turn that pigment down. If you didn't already know, skin has a lifetime colour guarantee. Once I got a whole box of scouring pads from under the kitchen sink and tried to scrape the brown off my arms. I wanted my skin to grow back white so I could be beautiful like Mum. So when we sailed back to France, no one would look at us funny and I could blend in like white people do. But when the gauze pads came off, it was just the same brown again, full of scabs. So as much as possible, I pretend that I'm like water, no colour at all. Can't hurt me if you can't see me. That's what I used to think about Dad. Same went for that William Freeman fella, my grandfather. True enough, there are things I want to tell you about him. Things not even Mum knew, but I can't tell you right now. Secrets like those have to be unwrapped at just the right time. I look inside the Red River Hotel. Pokey lights are still blinking their happy times bright rainbow. They don't sleep. Pat catches me looking at him and flicks his eyes back to the road ahead. I roll down the window and listen to the gravel crunching under the tyres. Let the sound massage my ears. When Mum was here, I never thought about what this town was made of, but after the fall, the world shattered into 1,000 pieces. Then I realised those little particles of dust floating through the air were a part of every word we said, every breath and step we took. When they float away, there'll be nothing left. And now this place is all but gone. That brings us to the end of chapter 1. I hope you enjoyed listening to this introduction to metal fish falling snow. We have a copy in our school library, so please borrow it and read it and let me know what you think. Thanks very much for listening. I'll see you next time.